Arsenal have just beaten Newcastle 3-2 in pre-season, a game where Zubimendi was once again very impressive and could go down as potentially one of the signings of the season. I think people underestimate how important a number 6 is. Elanga gets a goal for Newcastle, Jacob Murphy an excellent goal for Newcastle. And there were some points of the game when Newcastle were playing really well. Arsenal really struggled the first 20 minutes or so, but Arsenal did go into the game. They did end the game better. But the guy that stole the show is Max Dowman, 15 years of age. Now, I don't want to get carried away and massively overhype a kid that is that young. You've got to be careful with players that are that young. But Max Dowman's one of those talents you just can't not talk about. You know, it's easy to get carried away looking at this academy kid and that academy kid and saying they're so good. But Max Dowman's one of those talents you just cannot not talk about. He's so good. This is Newcastle. I don't care that it's pre-season. This is Newcastle. Arsenal have consistently struggled against Newcastle. Consistently. He's doing this against one of the sides that Arsenal have consistently struggled against. And he's gone out and he's absolutely been balling it up for Arsenal. So we're going to break down the game. These were the two starting 11s. We're going to talk about what Newcastle need, what Arsenal need. And I'm going to break down what we learned from the game. I want to start by talking about Dowman and Arsenal. And I still think Arsenal are screaming out for a Rafael Leão type player. I want to talk about Newcastle, what Newcastle need. I want to talk about Zubimendi, his importance, what the game tells us. Calafiore, Odegaard looking better. There's a lot to talk about, so do stay with me. But yeah, let's get into it. Max Dowman. Now, Max Dowman has been hyped up on my timeline a lot. Heard a lot about him. Cool. Intrigued to watch him. But, you know, there's a lot of players that are hyped up on the timeline and they're good youngsters. But, you know, time will tell. Max Dowman is generational. You know, it reminds me a little bit of two seasons ago in pre-season how Kobbie Mainoo just came into Man United and he was ridiculously good in pre-season and he looked ready. Now, Kobbie Mainoo was just freshly 18 when he's done that. Max Dowman is 2.5 years younger than Kobbie Mainoo and doing that. So that makes it even more crazy that he's 15, because when a player does that at 18, you're pretty amazed. A player does that at 17, you're pretty amazed. But 15, like 15 is ridiculous. Like, just the context, like when Mainoo was doing that at 18 in his pre-season, playing like that, we were like, wow. And Mainoo obviously had that brilliant season and got into the England squad. But Max Dowman is 15. Like, this guy, and I don't want to, like, overhype him because he's so young and it wouldn't do him any good. But when I'm looking at him, I'm looking at who's going to give Lamine Yamal potential competition, because Lamine Yamal is the guy. And I'm like, he could be that guy. Like, there's some great talents out there, don't get me wrong. You know, we've got some great talents at Man United. Tottenham have got players like Mikey Moore. Chelsea have got some brilliant players. Liverpool have got Rio and Yamoa. But Max Dowman's just ridiculous. Like, that run he made to win the penalty, absolutely ridiculous. And 15 years of age, he looks like he's going to give Arteta a little bit of a headache right now. You know, I think he's going to get minutes. Arteta's going to be in a position where he's like, actually, this guy's going to play. I'm going to get minutes next season, because this isn't just one preseason game. This is 2 preseason games against Milan, against Newcastle, difficult opposition where he's getting the ball. He doesn't look physically out of place. He doesn't look technically out of place. He's demanding the ball. He's running. He's making things happen. Taking the ball out there on the right, running around a few players, absolutely sending Matt Targett to retirement, who Matt Targett isn't the best fullback he's going to come across, to be fair. But still, you can only judge what's in front of him, and winning that penalty. And it wasn't just that. He played some good passes, some good shots. He was willing to make an influence. He's 15. At 18, I'd be impressed. But at 15, that's 3 years difference. That's still ridiculously crazy. And you could see he was beating players. He was confident. The ball honestly sticks to his feet like glue. In terms of technical ability, in terms of IQ, he's ridiculous. And, you know, I always think that Arsenal overhyping this guy. I know they have this Max Dowman kid in their academy, but I don't watch a lot of Arsenal academy. But no, they're not, like, you know, when Arsenal are hyping him for a reason, he's fantastic. He's the best 15-year-old I've watched in the flesh. You know, in my lifetime right now. Like, I said in the flesh. It's not in the flesh, actually, because in the flesh would be in person. He's the best 15-year-old that I remember watching play with first team. I've seen under 16, under 18s games, of course. But this is the most... I can't remember the last time I watched someone that was 15 playing in a pre-season friendly that was that good. Maybe I have, but 15, 16, you know, Rio and Yamal was good. Mainoo 18 was good. Didn't see Yamal at 15. Ridiculously good. Like, he's insane. Arsenal have a player there, and I could spend this video talking about Max Dowman, but there's a lot of talking points I want to get into in today's video. Actually, I want to talk about Newcastle. I want to break down the game. I want to talk about many things. So let's get into it. We'll get back to Max Dowman, but I do think with Max Dowman coming in, Do Arsenal go for someone like Leão more than Eze? We're going to have a conversation about that. But let's talk about Arsenal, and then I want to talk about Newcastle, and then I want to talk about Arsenal again. So the game in general, I thought Newcastle started the better team. I thought Newcastle were really good the first 20, 25 minutes. They were just physically more up for it. And it looked a little bit like some of the Carabao Cup semi-final, the first 20 minutes, where Newcastle were just causing issues in the transition. They were more up for it. They were better. A really good well-worked goal. Elanga, very good finish. Newcastle go 1-0 up. Newcastle looked good. But Arsenal then did finally start to grow into the first half, and Marina scored a good goal. Unlucky own goal, actually, as well. I thought the Murphy guy at left-back was actually really good until, obviously, their own goal. And obviously, Arsenal go in 2-1 up at half-time. I think Newcastle started the second half better. Really good work by Jacob Murphy, individual great goal. But again, I felt like Newcastle started both halves better, but Arsenal ended both halves better. And obviously, Max Dowman, that incredible run he made, wins the penalty, and boom, 3-2 Arsenal. I want to say Martin Odegaard was up at his game today. Maybe he saw Max Dowman and went to up his game. Zubimendi, very good. I think could be one of the signs of the season. Havertz was good. Arsenal desperately need a left winger. That's something we need to address. Of course, Gyökeres didn't play in this game. Madueke didn't play in this game, who has been signed. So there's some questions about Arsenal in the final third. They could have done this, they could have done that throughout the game, but they've literally signed 2 players to do that didn't play, because there was a little bit of Arsenal that I saw from last season. A lot of it was similar to the Arsenal I saw from last season when it got to the final third. But they have made 2 signings to address that. They're looking to bring in Eze, which would be a fantastic third signing. But I still look at them and think they need Leão. Now, there's questions over Leao's work rate, but when you look at the work rate of the rest of the Arsenal squad, Saka, you can afford to have a player like Rafael Leão because he is a game-breaking left winger. Martinelli and Trossard are solid, but Martinelli and Trossard for me are solid depth options. They're not good enough starting left winger to win a Premier League. They're not elite enough. Eze can come in on left wing and be that guy, but Arteta prefers his left wings to be a bit more wide. Does that suit Eze? Would Eze be better centrally? But then you've got Max Dowman and Wanjeri that can give Odegaard the competition more centrally. I do look at it and say Arsenal need Rafael Leão. You know, there was backline vulnerability shown by Arsenal today. You could see maybe Gabriel's absence there. Maybe Raya could have done better. But I thought Arsenal defensively out of possession are good. Newcastle did cause them some issues. They are missing Gabriel. I think Calafiore is a good player. Shame he got injured. Saliba, good player. But I do look at them and think they still, when they get to the final third, they lack that transition threat. They lack that directness threat, that running power. And obviously Madueke is going to bring that and Gyökeres is going to bring that. But I do look at creative options and wingers like Rafael Leão and say in transition, he's exactly what they need, is a powerhouse transition-based left winger. I think he'd make such a difference to Arsenal if they went for Leão. You know, left wing for me is an issue. Madueke comes in and you've got elite right wing depth. If Saka gets injured, you've got an unbelievable replacement there, and it will take the burden of running Saka into the ground and give Arsenal finally Man City level depth. But Madueke coming in at left wing, it can work. He can work. He could be the Rafinha kind of guy. But realistically, I think Arsenal needs someone like Rafael Leão that can play left wing, play right wing. You know, Eze's Premier League proven. Eze's brilliant. He can come more central. But if Dowman could potentially be that guy and break through this season at 15, which is absolutely crazy to think, do you go for Leão over Eze? I think if you got both, that would be the best thing you could do. But like, I'm just looking at it and saying, I think Arsenal could do with Leão. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Newcastle because we're 8 minutes into the video and I've not touched upon it a lot. I thought Elanga, Gordon, and ECILA worked well in transition. I think ECILA showed that he's still very raw and you need that striker now. But I thought they worked well in general, particularly in the first 20 minutes. Obviously, Jacob Murphy's impact off the bench is good. And to think that Elanga and Gordon are likely as starting wingers with Murphy and Barnes on the bench, one area Newcastle have got locked down and absolutely perfect is their wingers. But they need their strikers. They need Sesko. They need Vissa. Arguably, they need number 10, maybe a Harvey Elliott. But then you also need a centre-back and you also need a goalkeeper. Like, you can very much tell that. Like, the depth other than wing isn't good at Newcastle. Pope is struggling in build-up. You need a goalkeeper. Botman, fantastic player, injury-prone. You need a goalkeeper. I need a centre-back because Shah is ageing and Botman's always injured. You know, Willock and Target, just not good enough. Willock, I liked the player. I thought it was a good signing, but he's had enough chances, enough injuries. He's just not doing enough. Newcastle need to look. And if I'm Newcastle, you go for Sesko, you go for Vissa, you go for potentially a Harvey Elliott, you go for Mark Gay if you could get him, or Scalvini if you can get him, and you go for Lamens, and Newcastle would look a lot better off. I still think, you know, this Joelinton, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes midfield three is so good that when one of them doesn't play and you do throw a Longstaff in there in the past, or you throw a Willock in there, you can see the drop off. There's depth that's needed because Newcastle in the Champions League, if Newcastle are playing one game a week, you could get away with it more like you did last season. You had a fantastic season last season. But you're going to be in the Champions League. You're going to be playing a lot of games. And I think that Newcastle really don't have the depth for Champions League football. You really need to get on and do some stuff. I wouldn't say I was worried for Newcastle. You've got a fantastic manager who overachieves. But I think you could struggle next season if you don't get the depth, if you get a few injuries. I think your base 11 is really good. And obviously, if you get big money for ECILA, you've got money to spend. But I look at Pope, he was a liability. I look at the centre-backs picking up injuries. I look at the lack of depth behind the likes of Livramento and Lewis Hall. Of course, Trippier's a good old player. But I do look at it and think, your midfield three, if one of them gets injured, you're in trouble. You're going to need two ready-made strikers, I think. Maybe someone that's going to help break down low block because you're building such a good transition side. But actually, if you need to break down a low block, do you want to look at a Paqueta? Do you want to look at a Harvey Elliott type player to do that? Centre back. There's a lot that Newcastle need to do. In terms of other things I want to mention, I thought Zubimendi did well. I think he dictated the tempo. I think he made some good passes. I think his positioning was good. He was sharp. I think Zubimendi could go down as one of the signings of the season, an underrated player. I think people undervalue how important a six is. You look at Newcastle, the improvement Newcastle showed in the last year. Tonali was the only guy that really came into that Newcastle 11, and obviously all the other players that weren't injured. But Tonali made a huge impact on Newcastle and them getting Champions League football last season. I think Zubimendi, a sixth signing, is really important. And that's what annoys me about being a Man United fan is Baleba, all these good midfielders are there and United neglecting it. And it's frustrating because I think games can seriously be won and lost in midfield. But I think Zubimendi could go down as one of the signings of the season. I thought Havertz had a good game, was creating the 2 goals, making good runs. I think Gyökeres is some good competition, but they can play together. I thought Havertz was well. But what this game shows us is I still think Arsenal lacked that killer instinct. But it's not really a concern because they have brought Madueke and Gyökeres in, Eze also set to come in. I do feel like Arsenal were a little bit like the Arsenal we saw last season where it gets to the final third and there's elements of them that are quite lacking. But this is Newcastle. This is a Newcastle side that give Arsenal a lot of issues, cause them a lot of troubles, who were causing them issues in transition. And while Newcastle had some good spells, they need that centre mid, they need that striker, they need that centre back, they need that goalkeeper, they need that depth. Arsenal need their attackers, Newcastle need their general depth. Other notes, I thought Calafiore was good. I thought Odegaard was good, and I've been quite critical of Odegaard lately. Dowman was excellent. I thought Elanga did well. Tonali did well. I think it was a pretty even game, but yeah, Arsenal did enough to get the win in the end. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.